I'll admit it, I hate pest snails. Yeah, they can keep your aquarium free of algae, but I don't care. I don't like anything that can breed out of control. Hi, my name is Irene with girltalksfish, and for the past 10 years that I've been keeping aquariums, I've been 100% pest snail free. So I'm gonna share my 5 easy methods that you too can do to prevent the great snail invasion. And stay tuned to the end so you can hear about my favorite go-to method. Method number 1 is just buy tissue culture plants. They are plants that are grown in a lab, so they're gonna be completely free of algae, pests, duckweed, you name it. They are gonna be a little bit more expensive and usually smaller than the farm-raised potted versions of it, but don't let that stop you. I just went to PetSmart recently. I got 3 tissue culture plants, and then because I didn't have to worry about the snails, boom, I could just put them directly into my tank. No fuss, no mess. Now the Bucephalandra and Bulbitis, they're doing fine. In fact, already growing a few new leaves. However, the cardinal plant, I wasn't really sure about just because it's a stem plant. I've never kept it before. I wasn't sure if it was going to melt while it converted to growing underwater submerged leaves. So I floated a bunch of them near the surface so they could get more carbon dioxide to grow faster, as well as I planted the rest of them in pots down below. And it turns out the planted bunches ended up growing faster and bigger, especially if they were right under the light. Method number 2 is manual removal, which is pretty self-explanatory. You're gonna closely examine that plant, see if you see any eggs or snails and pluck them off, maybe rinse them underwater, shake them underwater to flush them out. I don't have a ton of confidence in this method just because baby snails and eggs can be pretty sneaky and hard to spot. However, I do know some people who set up a separate plant quarantine tank, and they will actually put their plants in there first, see if anything hatches or appears before they put them in their display tanks. Method number 3 is get your plants from a snail-free source. Now that's a little bit harder than just saying it because most commercial businesses will not guarantee that their plants are free of, snails or duckweed or other things. However, if your aquariums or maybe a really close friend that they've been 100% snail-free forever, you could propagate those plants. Like stem plants are really easy. You can just cut off the tips and replant them into your own aquarium. There are floating plants. Those also multiply very quickly. If you've got, dwarf Sagittaria or any other plant that has runners, very easy to remove those babies, put them in your own tank, and they should be safe. Now I have made some purchases from Etsy sellers that claim to be 100% snail-free, but again, buyer beware, you never know. And in fact, method number 4 I'm going to talk about is there was one case where I got some red root floaters from a salesperson and I wasn't entirely sure whether they were clean. So I decided to put the plants in an aquarium with snail killers. So we're talking about dwarf chain loaches and really any kind of loach that has a really pointy face. They tend to be the ones that like to eat snails, as well as pufferfish, assassin snails. So again, most of the methods I'm recommending in this video are preventative measures, like before the plant ever enters your aquarium. But if you are already infested with snails, I would highly recommend using something that eats snails. Now, method number 5 is what I really wanted to talk about, a plant dip. If you've been on this channel before, you know that I've done many tests on some of the most common plant dips, such as bleach, copper, salt, potassium permanganate, alum, all of those. But my current go-to method is actually something called reverse respiration. You have got to try this. It's amazing. It's super easy, it's cheap, and best of all, completely free of dangerous chemicals. All you need is basically a 2-liter bottle of seltzer water, which is basically plain old water injected or carbonated with carbon dioxide gas. Don't use sparkling water or mineral water because that doesn't seem to work for some reason. Then you're going to need a watertight container with a loose fitting lid. You'll need an air pump with some airline tubing to aerate the water later, and then just some tap water. I think that's about it. So the instructions on the official reverserespiration.com website are as follows. Basically, you want to rinse your plant, your brand new plant that you're trying to treat, and then submerge it completely in that watertight container full of seltzer water. You can put that loosely fitting lid over it and then put the entire container in a completely dark area for 12 hours. after the 12 hours is over, you're gonna dump out the seltzer water, and then I just put in regular tap water. I don't dechlorinate it, submerge the plant again, and then that's where the air pump and the airline tubing comes in. You're gonna plug in that air pump and then just put the tip of the airline tubing into the water, and then it's going to aerate or bubble the water for at least 30 minutes. And then after that, you can just rinse off the plant again if there's anything dirty on it, and then put it directly into your aquarium. Easy peasy. Now I'm gonna put the link down below to the original forum post about reverse respiration so you can read about many people's experiences using this technique. However, I'm gonna talk about my personal own experiments that I ran in the past 2.5 years, which is why I haven't talked about it until now. So basically, if you follow the instructions as written and treat the plants in seltzer water for the complete 12 hours, and mind you, I was using Kroger branded seltzer water, and my tap water has a pH of 8.0 out of the faucet. So take that in mind. Anyways, here is what I experienced. So reverse respiration actually claims to not only get rid of snails, but also algae. So I actually first tested this method on my algae covered horrible plants from this particular aquarium. And I found that it did get rid of the brown, softer algae that was on the Anubias leaves, but it did not get rid of the black beard algae that was on my Bobitis plants. And you know, I looked at the forum pictures, they showed the black beard algae turning white and red, clearly dying. However, mine just, maybe it weakened it a little bit, but they totally stayed gray and nothing happened basically. So after that particular experiment with algae, I decided to not pursue testing the how good does it get rid of algae aspect, just because personally I'd rather balance my aquarium, because if I get rid of the algae on the plants but I put it back into the same environment without changing anything, it's probably just going to grow right back. Now, what reverse respiration is really good at is getting rid of snails. It got rid of ramshorn snails. It got rid of Malaysian trumpet snails. I cannot tell you how mind-blowing this is to me. Again, I have tested these things on many different types of chemicals, even bleach solutions, and because the Malaysian trumpet snail has such a tight trapdoor, it is able to live out of water for a very long time because it can keep the moisture in, but it also, that trapdoor basically keeps the bleach solution out. And so I wasn't able to soak them long enough where the bleach solution didn't kill the plants. You know, the Malaysian trumpet snails always out-survive them. However, something about that seltzer water and the bubbles going on blows open that trapdoor, and none of them ended up living. And then finally, I did get rid of bladder snails using this technique. However, I did find they were very clever, and the bladder snails, some of them learned how to crawl out of the seltzer water, and so they would escape their fate. So I'll talk about that, how to prevent that in a little while. The seltzer water was able to completely neutralize all snail eggs. Well, I only tested bladder snail and ramshorn snail eggs, but none of them hatched compared to the control group. And then finally, I had a little whoopsie. This is definitely my fault, but the seltzer water did end up killing some fragile plants. So I was testing guppy grass and pearlweed, and unfortunately, I covered them with saran wrap and put a few holes in it because I was tired of the bladder snails escaping. However, the instructions do clearly say, please use a loosely fitting lid, and therefore the pressure buildup under the saran wrap was way too much, and I ended up killing the plants. So I definitely should redo that particular experiment. Now, the lowest amount of time I did the reverse respiration experiments for would be 1 hour. And so in that case, the fragile plants, in this case I was testing pearlweed, it did end up surviving. It did get rid of the Malaysian trumpet snails, yes. It neutralized the bladder snail eggs. However, it did not get rid of the bladder snails, adults, that had already hatched out. Like, they totally survived. So I might need to repeat that experiment with bladder snails at the 3-hour mark and see what it does. Now, according to that really long forum post, apparently algae needs more time to be treated with seltzer water to get rid of it versus pests like pest snails, hydra, planaria, leeches even. They need less time, I mean, still a few hours in the seltzer water to neutralize them. And the other tip I saw in there is, you know, floating plants are kind of hard to completely submerge in the seltzer water. And so one person put them in a Ziploc bag, sucked out all the excess air. I have not personally tried this method, and I know certain floating plants like red root floaters really don't like to be completely submerged, so try at your own risk. The one con or difficulty I had with this process is that little step that says the plant must be completely submerged in the seltzer water. Because the problem is with lots of bubbles rising, the plant is gonna want to float as well. So some of the things I did was I tried to weigh down the plant using kitchen utensils, but sometimes the plant would like slip and then that would kind of ruin the process. You saw what happened when I tried to use saran wrap to seal everything in. Obviously the pressure was way too high, that might kill your plant. And then another thing was I tried to fill up the container all the way up with seltzer water, but then it tended to overflow, which is not a good thing. So how do you make sure to cover everything without killing your plant? And so my current method is to weigh down the plants with a towel, because that tends to cover all the crevices and it will weigh down, it will cover the entire plant, and then I will still loosely cover it with a lid on top of that. But let me know if you guys have any suggestions. Bottom line, I cannot overstate how awesome reverse respiration has been for me. It's completely revolutionized how I do plant dips. It is completely safe, very easy. It's not hard to dispose of, unlike some of the other methods I used, and I'm still completely 100% snail-free. So win-win-win all across the board. Huge thank you to the reverse respiration team for all your hard work and research, and let me know down in the comments if you have tried this method yourself and what happened. Take time to enjoy your aquariums, and I'll see you in the next video.